Hi everyone, my name's Tommy and today I'll walk you guys through another one of my projects that I made. So this project is a file organizer, and as the name suggests, if you give it a folder, it'll kind of organize the files into different categories. For example, images or documents. And so I thought this project was cool because it can actually, change the locations of your files on the computer you're running the program on. And so I'll give you guys a quick demo. So I'm gonna start the program, and it's gonna ask me for a folder path. So I'm gonna give it my desktop folder. And before I run the code or run the project, I'll show you guys what my desktop folder looks like right now. So it's basically these 4 screenshots, and there's these 2 folders, images and other. And so once I enter the folder path, let me delete that real quick. Once I enter this, it'll tell me my potential changes that I want to do. And so it says move screenshot to this folder called images, and so it'll do that 4 times because I have 4 screenshots. And then I'll do confirm to make changes, yes. And so it says I'm kind of to give another chance to undo because these are permanent changes, and I don't want anyone changing things when they didn't really want to. So I'm just gonna say yes because um, because I want to actually change my file location. So I'm gonna type Y, and says the change is kept. So now if we look at the desktop folder, you see that all my screenshots have been moved to the images folder. And so as you can see, they're all right there. And so this is cool because every time you give a folder to this program, it'll organize all your files. So I already did it to my downloads file. As you can see, files like this, I have a file called other that kind of sorts the files that have unconventional ending types like XLSX or DMG. But for these other files, for example, images or videos, you can see that all the JPEG files are in the images and all the MOV files are in the videos. So now I'll give you guys a walkthrough of how my code works. There is another function that I can show you guys really quickly. So say to users, Tommy Tang. Let me show you guys what happens if I take out all of my images. Give me a sec. So right now I'm manually taking out all of my screenshots and putting it into my desktop folder, which it originally was from. So what I can do is I'll do it again. I'll do users Tommy Tang desktop. And so it gives me these changes, and then see, look, now all of my screenshots are outside, and if I confirm to make changes, it'll put them all in images, as you can see. And then say I don't want to keep those changes, I'll press N to undo, and then it'll take all of the folders out. So basically it's an opportunity to catch your mistake if you do an accident, and it literally just took all of the files out. And I'll walk through my code now. It's honestly pretty simple. I had to import 2 different things. One was path, which kind of represents the location of your file, or like the path to the file, and then shootil, which can actually move the locations around. So first I made a dictionary of file types, which is pretty simple, like the name of the category and all of the different endings that it has. And let me walk through the main function. So the first thing I'll do is, obviously, as you guys saw, it asks for an input, enter the folder path. And actually, let me open my terminal again. Okay, yeah. So enter the folder path, and then you'll put the folder path in, and then it'll call organize folder. So organize folder is a pretty big function. First of all, it will make the folder that you give it, like the input, it'll make it into a path object, which is from the path import. And so with this path object, I'm able to do various things on it that I'll go into later. But first, actually, one thing that I can do is do .exists. And so it'll show you if that folder exists within your, like all of your files, and if it doesn't, it'll print that folder does not exist, that path is not a folder. If you got a file instead of a folder, or if you got a file instead of a folder, because you can't organize a file because it's just one thing, but you can organize a folder because there's a lot of files in that folder. And so in both case scenarios, nothing happens and it'll return an empty list. And when you return an empty list, it'll say, like, for example, it'll go through the if statement, not result, and then it'll print no files removed, so nothing happens, and then it'll basically just end. But if that is a valid folder, then it'll move on. It'll create an array called saved, and I'll go into why that's important. But it's basically there in order to, kind of keep your changes and actually, have a history of them. So if you want to undo, then you get to look back on this list and change it, and change your, like, the file movements. So here it says for item in folder.iterdir, which is another method for this class. And so basically it takes all of the files in the folder, and then what I'm doing is saying if this is a file, then you can get the category of the file, which is really simple. All you have to do is take the suffix, which is, like, for example, .docx, and then I'll take that suffix, and then if that suffix is in, one of these options, then it'll return the category. So if not, then it'll return other. And so going back to the organized folder method, I see that, where am I? Right. It's saying the category and the destination. So basically you get to, with the import, kind of make a path by using these slashes here, and it kind of represents the path in order to get to that file. So the path would be the folder, which is the folder you input, and then a category, which would be the category that you got from get category, and then finally the item name. So this is the destination of where you want your file to go, and then so I save that in a list called item destination as a tuple. And so as you can see here, if not saved, meaning that there's nothing in saved, then it'll return an empty list again, which will do nothing. And then if saved has files in it, meaning that there actually might be changes, then I'll print here the potential changes below. So for example, right here, that's where it got printed. And then it'll print, like, where you want to move that item to its destination. And so I confirm if the user would want to make those changes with a simple input y or n. And so if they say no, then it'll return an empty list, which will do nothing again. So now I'm going to make another list called completed, which basically is basically the same as save, but only includes the files that were actually moved. Because as you can see in this for loop below, there are going to be cases where two files have the same name, and so one file gets moved, and so another file would need to get its name changed. So I'll walk you through what happens then. So for each item and destination in the list saved, then first of all, if there is no image folder, so no parent folder, for example, like if I had just this desktop and these screenshots and I didn't have the image or other folders, then it'll create it by calling mkdir. And if it's already there, then nothing will happen. And then so I call destination get unique destination because, like I said before, sometimes a file might have the same name, and so nothing would happen, and we need to address that. So what I did was I said if this destination doesn't exist, like the new destination, then it'll just return the destination. But if there is already another destination that has the same name, then I'll set a label new destination, and then I'll create the name folder like an O1. For example, O and then _1 and then the JPEG file. And then so by doing that, it's basically setting numbers to your different files. So if I had two files named image, then one would be called one image and another one would be called two image. So then they could both be stored. And so I do a while loop to keep on adding a number so that there eventually be a unique file. And then after that, I used this shootil method, which I got from my second import. And so that basically moves the item that you want into the destination. And so that's basically the bulk of how I'm actually moving my files. I'm just using the shootil method. And then I'll add all of my completed file changes into my completed list. And I'll return that list. And so the reason why I return that list is because of my undo function, which like the undo function needs to know which changes to actually undo. So if we go to my main function, I see here that I did like a simple input statement again, and if they say no, then they don't want to keep the changes, then it'll call undo result. And so I kept result as the completed list, and so undo will take that result as a parameter. And so as you can see here, first of all, it'll make a folders to remove set, because sometimes you can remove different folders in case they become empty. So here I did a for loop for every item in save, where I basically save one as original location and another as current location. And then so if I see that there is like a file in a new folder that I created, then it'll move it back to its old one. And so I do that by doing shootil.move. And I'm also accounting for cases where, the current location doesn't exist, or whether the original location exists, because that means that there's nothing to undo. And then at the end, I'll print restored, because I wanted to let the user know that, that the file was restored successfully, and the change that was made was undone. And so this for loop is basically kind of getting rid of a folder if there's nothing inside it. When you take it out, like say you add a folder to, say you had like an image folder, and then you added like a file to it. Or no, say that you didn't have an image folder, and then you call file organize on the files, and then you made a new image folder to add those files in. So if you undo, then it'll take those files out, but then it'll also get rid of that image folder. And it didn't happen in my case here because I already had the image folder, like it was already made, so it didn't get deleted, but otherwise it would get deleted. And I would do that by doing a try except statement, where I would remove the folder using the folder.rmdir command. And so yeah, that's basically my file organizer. I think that I thought the shootil import was obviously really important because that's how the files were actually changed. But I originally wasn't going to include an undo method, but then I realized that these are big changes that really can't be undone. So I really wanted to make sure that the user knew what they were doing. And so even if they confirm the changes, they could still undo it. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you.